If you've been on the hunt for an eMTB with a mid-drive motor that doesn't break the bank, well, you're probably still on the hunt because there's just not a lot of options out there. Well, meet the new Ride1Up TrailRush. It's an eMTB hardtail from Ride1Up that's got all the bells and whistles and features you need for true eMTB mountain bike single track. Complete with 29er wheels that are tubeless compatible, a dropper post, RockShox suspension, Tektro 4-piston caliper, hydraulic disc brakes, and more. So, how does it all perform in the real world, and what are you really getting for $2,095? Well, we're gonna find out today in our review of the Ride1Up TrailRush. All right, so when it comes to the new Ride1Up TrailRush, there's quite a few things to go over. We'll start with the basics though. This is priced at $2,095, so right at that $2,000 price point. And I caution you now, if you were to go and compare other real eMTBs with real mid-drive motors and all the bells and whistles for real single track, you'll notice that this might be the best value out there in the market, which is a strong move by Ride1Up, and in my opinion, kind of a shot across the bow to the industry players and letting them know, hey, we're coming and we're putting out things that people want at a price that really beats your guys's. So that is a really cool start right off the bat. Now, in addition to that, this bike is UL 2849 certified. It is class 3 capable with no throttle because it is a true eMTB. You don't have a throttle on here, which I think is great. I live in an area with very technical, loose, chunky trails, and the last thing I want is to accidentally tap that throttle on an area with a steep drop off or where mistakes can cost you in some pain, debt back to the bike. But with that said, this bike itself, they say it weighs 58 pounds, but I weighed this one when it came in for testing and it weighed right at 58 pounds. That's not something we see often. Generally, we get a number from the manufacturer, we test it, and it's usually a 5 pound, even more variance. This one was right on the money, actually like 57.9 for this bike, the way it's set here. So right on the money at 58 pounds. Now, some colors and frame information. This is the cobalt blue, but if you don't like this, they also have what's called a burnt sunset, kind of a darker like sunset orange color. And then if you don't like those, they also have their galaxy gray, which is my absolute favorite. It's kind of a glossy, dark gray, almost black metallic paint job. But when the sun hits it in certain lights, you can see all sorts of different glitter, like metallic flake and rainbow colors. Really, really cool paint job. And surprisingly, that paint job costs the same as the rest of these. They're all just included in the standard price of $2,095. Definitely check out that galaxy gray though. I think it's one of the cooler colors. Some geo numbers for this, frame sizes. We have a regular frame size that fits from 5'5" up to 5'10", but if you're taller, they have a large frame size like I was sent here, and this one fits from 5'10" all the way up to 6'4". Now, generally when I get on these and I put my own height into the fit range, I try to determine how much room is there beyond just me riding the bike for you guys at home. And I found at 5'11", my height, when I get on this bike, it fits up to 6'4", they say. And this is one of the few bikes I got on recently that really felt like, oh, it feels kind of big underneath me. I do think if you're in that upper 6'2", 6'3", 6'4" maybe, that this will still fit you the way it should. I had plenty of room in the seat post. I got a nice wide, long reach, about a 20-inch reach up top here with wide 780mm bars. So I do think this could fit most folks in that range from 5'10" up to 6'4". Now, when it comes to some specific geo numbers for the large frame, we've got about a 48-inch wheelbase from front hub to rear hub and vice versa. We've got a 20.5-inch reach up top. We have about 6 inches of adjustability in the Exaform dropper seat post, and we have a max payload of 350 pounds. And as far as the standover height, that midsection on the top bar, it's about 32 inches. So if you have a 32-inch inseam, you can stand over this without touching that top bar there. Now, when it comes to things like wheels and tires, this is where a lot of brands try to say they jump into the MTB game, but they don't quite hit the mark. And one of the just kind of basic staples these days for a real mountain bike, as silly as it sounds, is something like tubeless compatible wheels and tires. Now, in the past, we've seen brands release bikes that don't have tubeless wheels and tires, and the first thing I thought, living in an area with lots of flats, that, gosh, I'm gonna have to spend this money on wheels now and tires now so I can set it up tubeless. But the TrailRush here already comes tubeless, both wheels and tires. We've got true 29er-inch wheels, double alloy wheel set they're wrapped in Maxxis Minion DHF and DHR wheels, tires that are also tubeless compatible. Now, Ride1Up does clarify you'll need to add tubeless tape and a set of tubeless valves, but you can pick that up at your local bike shop for 20 bucks and you are ready to go tubeless, which is a really nice setup from the gate. You don't have to worry about buying a bunch of extra things. So I thought that was really cool as well. Now, going tubeless is going to allow us to run lower PSIs, allow us to get better grip, allow us to have more cushion when you come off drops and things like that. So tubeless and tubeless compatible tires, small maybe on the marketing sheet, but big in terms of real world performance and how it's going to affect you on your mountain bike journey. Now, with that said, I would normally go into things like accessories and fenders and racks, but this is an eMTB, so we don't have all of that Gucci gear for daily commuting. But what we do have is a couple mounting points here on the seat tube and the down tube if you wanted to add a water bottle cage or maybe some sort of trail maintenance kit, some sort of repair kit or tool kit if you want to take that with you. And I do see some other mounting point here. It looks like you could, in theory, add a rear rack if you wanted to. I haven't seen any documentation come out yet about specific accessories for this bike, but it does look like, based on these holes here, that they did set it up for maybe fenders and a rear rack. Nonetheless, it doesn't ship with those, so what you're getting, the way you see it here, is what you're getting out of the box. In terms of lighting, there is no lighting either. No front light, no rear light, no fenders, and then, like I said, just some mounting points for extra gear. But nonetheless, at a minimum, you've got your bosses on the down tube and seat tube to set up with some accessories if you want to bring them for your ride. So when it comes to the muscle of the TrailRush, that's going to be the star of the show here, which is the Brose mid-drive motor. Now, this is the Brose TF Sprinter edition. It puts out 250 watts nominally, but it peaks up to 410% of the rider's effort and pumps out 90 Newton meters of torque. Now, when we start talking about e-bikes, eMTBs, especially this 50-poundish range, 100 Newton meters of torque in that ballpark, in this case 90, it's a strong number with a lot of torque. It really makes hills easy work. It makes steep, punchy climbs on features easy work. It's a really strong, fun motor that I think complements this nice 29er hardtail really, really well. Now, in terms of riding modes, we have 4 riding modes. There's Eco, Tour, Sport, and Boost. In my time with the bike, I found that when I was riding around city streets and paved surfaces, Eco and Sport were more than enough. I felt really good with those. I never felt like I needed Sport and Boost for any reason, because as you pedal harder, because these have torque sensors, they work harder. But I will say, when you get into technical mountain bike terrain, especially on climbs, I found that basically Sport and Boost worked the best for me to get that immediate feedback, that immediate low-end torque that I wanted to get up over features without having a ton of pedaling or ratcheting, and that allowed me to do that in those higher PAS modes. Now, again, there's no throttle on this bike, but that is by design. Like I said earlier, you don't want to accidentally bump the throttle when you're on a feature that might have quick drop-offs, not a lot of reaction time. And the last thing you want is your bike running out from under you when you're not ready for it on a dangerous or sketchy feature. Now, in terms of the battery, we have this down tube integrated battery. It's a 36-volt battery that has 14 amp hours, giving us 504 watt hours of power. Now, this is secured in place with a set of keys. I'll show you how they'll come out. So the bike will ship with a set of keys like most e-bikes do. There's a key slot here. I'll put that in and I will bring this down. There's a small cover that comes off first, and then one more tab to release the final battery. Now, this battery is, like I said, 36 volts, 14 amp hours with 504 watt hours of power, and this has a 1-year warranty along with the rest of the bike. Now, to put this back, I'll simply just put it in place the opposite direction, put the bottom in first, snap the top in. That will hold in place because of that secondary retention lever, and then I will put the cover back in place and you're good to go. Now, in terms of range for this 504 watt hour battery, they say you can get between 30 miles and 50 miles, and generally that's going to be in a situation where you're using lower PAS levels to get that maximum distance out of it. But I decided to do a range test in 2 runs. On the minimum, I got a pretty whopping 78 miles, which far surpasses their expectations. If I try to ask myself why that occurred, well, I'm about 180 pounds. The paths I ride here in town, there's not a lot of stopping. They're flat. There's not a lot of elevation out here. So pretty ideal circumstances. And in eco mode, the bike's really not putting out a lot of juice. And with a torque sensor, it's dynamically applying power based on my pedaling effort. Anyway, that's a long-winded way of saying it just wasn't putting out a lot of power. And between my own pedaling and its little assistance, we just went a really far way. And 78 miles at around 10 miles an hour takes a very long time. That was a long test, but it shows in the right conditions, maybe going slow, you can go really far on this bike. Now, on the flip end of that, I recharged it and went out on a max test, and this one was at PAS 4, the Boost PAS, going basically full bore the whole time, and I still covered 31 miles, lasting over right around 2 hours. Those are really strong numbers for a bike like this, especially 58 pounds with all this meat on the tires. You got rolling resistance here, and it still performed really nicely, just showing that system is really efficient and performed really well in those circumstances. So when it comes to things like components, that's where mountain bikes are kind of where you make it or break it in terms of what they can do. The components really do matter. Now, I'm happy to say this one is equipped really well, especially at this price point, to be a true mountain bike. Not only, like I mentioned earlier, do we have the 29-inch wheels along with tubeless compatible wheels and tires, we've got, in a group set terms, we have a Shimano Deore M6000 1x10 drivetrain. So up front, we've got a 38-tooth chainring with a Shimano 11 to 36-tooth rear cassette. And the chain itself is a KMC chain that is e-bike rated, which may not sound like a big deal, but it really is going that little bit extra mile for the customer, because these chains can take a lot more of that tension and a lot more of the work on those pulleys that normally get damaged on a regular bike chain when it gets put on an e-bike motor with that constant stress. This is a chain that should last a little bit longer and just handle that constant torque a little better than a standard chain. Those little things, they don't really market, but those go a long way in the life of your bike. Now, in terms of the bike itself, the braking, we have Tektro Orion, and it's their 4-piston caliper setup with 180 rotors, 180 millimeters front and back. And that 4-piston calipers front and back is gonna go a long way in giving you really nice, precise braking. You have good modulation in those levers up top, and that will allow you, when you're coming in through turns and you're dealing with obstacles and certain features on a trail, that's going to give you that precise braking and control you need to manage your body weight, your momentum, the bike's direction without losing control or just overrunning turns, things like that. The brakes did phenomenal in this build, and I think 4-piston Tektros was the way to go, and the Shimano 1x10 Shimano Deore was also another solid choice. Now when it comes to the saddle, that's another important area. Now this is a Cell Royale SRX, a true MTB saddle. It's got a nice cutout channel here for some pressure relief in the groin area. And then on top of that, it is sitting on an Exaform 150 millimeter dropper post. You can put this down while you're riding downhill so it's not bouncing up and hitting you where you don't want it to hit you, or you can pop it up and ride on it while you're climbing and doing your normal riding. You want that proper leg extension. Having this at a remote push button out of the way is a really, really nice feature. Solid choice on the seat and the dropper post altogether. Now moving up front, we do have RockShox Judy Silver, which is a RockShox air fork, and it also has lockout adjustments and rebound control. It's got 120 millimeters of travel, and like I said, you can lock that out if you want to for things like climbing, or if you just want to eliminate suspension for a bit, you can do that while you go, which also has the ability, if you wanted to set up a remote lockout, but that's kind of going over the top for the bike like this. Now 120 millimeters is considered short travel and mountain bike, meaning this is not a bike to take to Whistler Bike Park and try to do 20-foot gap jumps. It's not built for that. This is a trail riding, almost cross-country style, down-country style bike as far as geometry and travel numbers go in your suspension. Very capable, just not built for the extreme wild stuff, which you could probably already imagine. Now, in terms of the cockpit up front here, we have our cables coming off. They are routed into the frame. We have a 780 millimeter wide alloy bar here that also has a slight rise to it and a little bit of a sweep backwards. We have Velo lock-on grips on both sides with a nice tacky rubber feel to them. Then we have our Tektro Orion brake levers that feel really nice, have some modulation when you're using them on the trail. On the right-hand side, we have our Shimano Deore trigger shifters with window. And on the left side, we have our dropper post remote and our Brose display. So let's take a closer look at the Brose display and see what you can manage to use on this little color display while you're riding. All right, so this is the Brose display. It's the Brose all-around display. It's a 1.5-inch color screen that, if you have a problem with small font or small text, seeing those things, that's something to keep in mind, because it's not a big display and there is no app to pair it with to make your phone a larger display. So that's just something to keep in mind. And then one other small con I had on this, if you notice here, the PAS buttons are down below the screen, but so is the remote drop lever. And I found while I was riding on a trail and I was, my hands were bouncing and grip was changing, a couple times I tapped that PAS control button, changing it mid-ride when I wasn't really looking to. So if you own the bike, I would try to look for a configuration of maybe angling this up more so the buttons come out, or just moving things over with the remote lever, but maybe find something that works a little bit better for you. I did find that I had to kind of tweak this mid-ride just to get it right, but nonetheless, it's still easy to use and there's very few buttons you got to worry about. Up top is the power button, below it is the menu button, but here in the main screen, we have the power bar on the left and a 5-bar meter, but it actually has half-bar increments, so it's a total of 10 bars. Right now, you can see you have about 3.5 remaining. Above that, we have our battery remaining in percentage numbers, so 65% remaining. Next to that is the headlight icon, but the bike has no headlight. That's because this motor and controller can be used on multiple bikes, and so it's equipped to work with bikes that also have headlights, so you can ignore the headlight icon on here. In the top right, we've got our PAS controls. We're currently off, but go to Eco, Tour, Sport, and Boost, and you can go back down to Eco or off. Now, when you see it off, it says you have 0 miles left of pedal assist. If I turn it on, it changes to 24. So right now we have 127 miles on the odometer and 24 miles left remaining of pedal assistance. We turn that off, it basically just says we have 127 miles on the bike. Now, if I cycle through more data screens here, I can hit this menu button and it'll say we have 127 miles for the life of the bike with a 12.9 mile per hour average speed for the life of the bike. Then we have wattage, power and cadence, or excuse me, power wattage outputs, as well as RPM cadence and power output. And then we have, by hitting it again, you can see for the life of the bike, our average watts have been 62 and our average cadence has been 56. And cycling that one more time takes you back to the home screen. Now there's a couple advanced settings you can play with in here. I'll show you how those work real quick. We're gonna hold the menu button on the bottom side. That's gonna take us to the only advanced settings we have because there is no app on here. So first things first, you have your trip information. You can reset the entire display, or you can go into settings here. We'll go into settings, and then here's where you get your basics. So we can change language of the bike. There is a Bluetooth connection feature here. I did play with it, and while my phone can connect, it can't do anything because there's a Brose app in Europe, but there's not one here in the US App Store, at least at this time. So in the future, if they do release some app connectivity, it would be through the Brose app, and that's where you'd be able to connect this to your phone. But for now, it's kind of like the headlight feature. It's there, but it's not for this bike. If you go down to screens, you can change the layout of the screens. I can put it back to all different types of menu types. I can go to screen, I can change the type of features that are shown on the screen: average speed, trip time, trip, clock, odometer, cadence, average cadence, all those things we just showed you. You can uncheck those if you want to, or check them to have them on there. They're all checked for now, but we'll just back out of this and go back to the next settings. And then for display, you can mess with brightness. So right now it's an automatic brightness, but you could change it to a 50% or a pure black and white brightness if you wanted to. And then you can back out there. System is gonna give you system information about the bike. The units are in miles, the time's in a 12-hour format. You can put it in a 24. Battery status between bar and numerical percentage, one or the other or both. Change the current time on the bike, how long it takes for the bike to shut down once you stop using it, restoring everything to default factory settings, and backing out. One more, take you down to information, and this will give you regulatory things like the drive unit information. If we click regulatory, we'll see we get like the model number, FCC numbers, just that government regulatory stuff that they're required to have. Let's see if we can back out of that. There we go. Drive unit information, battery information, a lot of just specific serial numbers and model numbers. If you ever reach out to service or need warranty work, you can find it in there. And then service specific information will give you service intervals at a certain mileage if you want to set that up as well. And then one more, and that takes you back to the home screen. And that really is everything from the basics as you ride. You can see now we have a new screen set up because I was playing with that display options. Now we have a larger speedometer. If you want that larger font, you can use it here. Still the same battery bar indicator. And then the menus change down here. Our max power has been 505, range 24 miles, current time, that's definitely not the right time. And then we have about 127 miles on it, about 9.5 hours of riding time with an average speed of just shy of 13 miles an hour. And a max speed of 26 miles an hour, and then back to the odometer. And that wraps up the all-round display by Brose. Everything you need, not a lot you don't, and pretty simple and straightforward. All right, guys, we're out here at a local trail just outside of town. Kind of a popular spot for everybody of all ages because you can do anything from kind of mild to go out here and do some pretty fun stuff if you like to get a little bit more wild with it. But today we're gonna hit kind of a flowy green line. It's got some small jumps here and there, mostly a lot of technical loose berms and up downs and just some playful stuff. Something that this bike is probably ideal for. Some just fun trail riding, nothing crazy, not bike park stuff. Right now I've got it in boost, and this thing just climbs like a mountain goat on boost. I mean, it doesn't even think about it. I notice on paved roads, doing eco sport or eco and tour is fine, so those PAS 1 and 2s. But when I get off-road, I like sport and boost because you get like power just, I mean, I know it's an e-bike, so this is not shocking, but the power on tap, two areas that really stand out because one, you just, when you're on the downhill part of the trail and you're just flowing, you get to a little flat spot and you need some speed maybe to build up for the next section, just a couple cranks of the pedals on boost and boom, you're up 10-15 miles an hour quicker than you were. And the other one is, there's some steep sections on this hill. Like we're on a slow incline right now, but towards the end, it gets pretty punchy. I mean, probably 15, 18% grade on the last two little hills you go up to get to the top where this downhill starts. And when you're on something like that, I mean, depending on my mood, some days I don't mind working for that. Other days I just want to do laps and not try really hard in my, wear myself out on the uphills. That's exactly where boost comes into play. I'm putting hardly any pressure on the pedals right now. I can climb up, no problem. Without getting crazy out of breath. I mean, usually when you get to the top of this, people are, they want to drink of water. It's been a couple miles of uphill. And this is something we can just hit and go. So I won't bore you guys with the next few miles of uphill, but when I turn it back on, we will be at those last two punchy hills at 15 to 18%, which will give you a good kind of idea how this bike does on something that it's actually hard to pedal up on a regular bike. Even in your best gear, your granny gear, a lot of people end up hopping off or bailing. So we'll take those last two punchy hills and then we'll do the downhill when I come back. All right, we're back. We're not quite at the top yet. We've got a little small section to roll down here, and then those two hills are around the corner. All right, so there they are straight ahead. I know on camera they don't look like much. I promise you, come out here, do it with your bike. They're more than they look like. There we go first. This next one. There we go. Super nice. Usually you're in your granny gear, you're leaning over the front wheel, and you're trying to get up over that. So let's head down and see how this trail rush feels. That right there is my favorite. A couple spins of the cranks on a flat spot and you just have speed. Put my dropper down. So a lot of this is going to be kind of twisty, flowy, but it's all loose and technical. Some small drops here and there, small jumps like that. Perfect for this bike. The front shock feels really good. Air forks have a really just a unique feeling compared to a coil fork if you haven't switched before. All right, so this spot right here is called the stairs. It's very steep, and these stairs are about 1 foot drops each. So on a hardtail, you definitely feel it, but that front shock ate up the brunt of the impact. So that's where we're going downhill. All right. There we go. Ooh, the brakes are awesome. It's 4-piston Tektro Dorados, or Orions, excuse me. Pretty sweet. Nice control braking. Some speed here. All right. So far, it's behaving really nicely. It feels like a cross-country bike. I've got a few. It actually, geo-wise, feels a lot like my Specialized Chisel. Certainly not the same weight, but the same feel. At least handlebar width, reach and stack, things like that. Which is pretty cool. There we go. These fat Maxxis tires are just chewing through. Tons of grip. I haven't felt any slippage yet, which is kind of wild on this loose trail. I should have gone tubeless before I came, just because, well, could have aired a little bit lower, but I'm pretty good. Boom. There we go. Yeah, it's doing great. Woo. Frame got a little high there. I mean, this performs like any other mountain bike I've ever ridden, hardtail wise. I mean, really the only difference I feel, some weight, which obviously is going to be given, and just that lack of rear suspension. But I think if you talk to a lot of guys who mountain bike a lot, hardtails are just fun. They just feel a little bit more playful. Still got a ways to go here. Areas like that where you got to drop off on one side. Not really any room for air on the other side. It's just handles those things well, the brakes. Good grip in the tires, good control on the brakes. Steps. All right. Little drop. Drop. Even the landings when I get a little bit of air are just Nice and plush when they drop. All right, so drop. There we go. Another steep one. Eats it up. Oh, those, and I dropped their bottle. Just very flowy and fun. I don't really feel like I'm working against the bike ever. I feel like I'm working with the bike, which is a pretty nice compliment. Sometimes you feel like you gotta wrestle an e-bike around on a trail because of the weight. This weight's nice and balanced. There we go. Just a fun bike, man. And we're back to the trailhead. Little drop here. There we go. Yeah, super fun, super agile. Just a playful hardtail. Got motor power to boot. Can't beat that. All right, guys, so let's take off our reviewer hats for a minute and put on more of an owner's hat and talk about this from a perspective of you at home. You're looking at the bike on your website and you're thinking everything looks great. You like the review and you want to pull the trigger, but what about those things you can't see, you can't really touch online, you don't hear reviewers talk about, that may just impact your choice when you get home and you get it and you say, oh, I didn't know it did that. These are the types of things we try to answer in this portion of the review. So first, I'll start with all the good, and then I'll go into a couple things that did drive me a little crazy. First things first, I've already harped on it a couple times, but tubeless tires on here. This was a massive improvement. It makes dealing with flats easier when you have sealant in there, makes airing down easier. It makes it ride more comfortable, better grip, just a lot of perks that come with tubeless tires. And now we have them on here. It's one of the first e-bikes I've seen, at least in this direct-to-consumer space, especially at this price point, that threw that in, and that was a solid option. Now, on top of that, it also applies to the tires, but more so with the motor placement. With this mid-drive motor being in the center here, I don't know if any of you at home have ever tried to replace a tire on the side of the road with a e-bike with a rear hub motor. Regardless of what people say, it's more challenging than you want to admit to yourself. And so having that motor in the center of the frame at the bottom bracket lets you just pull these tires off, change them, fix them, whatever you got to do with them with ease. There's no special parts you need. You don't need a ton of extra muscle dealing with the big heavy motor back here. Easy tire changes and placements, plus tubeless setup. All these are really solid, positive things. Also, we talked about the choice of a Shimano M6000 Deore 1x10 derailleur. This is clutched and has nice chain tension on here, but they also added a really beefy slap guard in case you do get some gnarly bounces on this bike. It's at least going to protect those chain stays over time. They didn't put a thin piece of film on here. They put a really beefed up rubber piece, and I think that was a smart choice as well. Another solid on here was they put both front wheel and rear wheel with through axle support. Through axles are easy to remove, easy to reinstall, and they're a stronger connection and not a huge headache of a bolt or a flimsy quick release. The best way to do it these days is through axle, and they put it on both front and rear, which was also a solid option. The other thing I touched on during components was this e-bike rated chain. We have a mid-drive motor. There's going to be a lot of stress on that chain, and these rollers and pulleys inside these e-bike rated ones are just going to be stronger and better able to deal with that constant force and torque. So that was another really solid job. In terms of some things that I don't love, pretty minimal. The fast answer is all these parts are found at your local bike shops. They're all interchangeable from parts you can find online of retailers and bike part dealers, Jensen, Competitive Cyclists, all those guys. If you want to beef up your mountain bike and improve every part, you can do it with almost everything on here. They're all plug and play parts because they're all name brand and just mainstream parts. Nothing crazy proprietary and nothing super odd or unique on it, which is a good thing from an ownership standpoint. Now, as far as what I didn't like, it goes back to this Brose display. Now, the size of the display is fine. The orientation of it is fine. What I found was my hand just kept bumping these PAS up and down buttons while I was riding on the trail. I did pull over at one point, and I actually tried to readjust them with my Crank Brothers little toolkit on the side of the trail. And that helped a little bit, but I would just rather have some sort of different display or way to orient the dropper post lever in a way that would just not interfere with each other. I just found my thumb doing too much wandering, too much tapping, and I just think because of the ergonomics of how you ride a mountain bike, you may find your thumb tapping that quite a bit. And then if I rotate the screen upwards, then it's kind of facing away from me and up into the sky. I don't know. It's one of those things that if you own it, you'll figure it out, but just be aware of that. It's definitely not a deal breaker by any means, just a small frustration point on my end. Other than that, everything was done really well. We have a 66.5 head tube angle, which keeps it right in that XC trail, our downcountry style bike where it's off-road capable enough to do those things on light single track, but it's also not slacked out and crazy with 160, 170 suspension for bike parks. It's a true, anybody can pick it up and do a little mountain biking safely and effectively the way a mountain biking should be done. They really did a solid job here. All right, guys, so there you have it, the new Ride1Up TrailRush. I've been a fan of Ride1Up since the CF Racer days, the original Roadster days. I just like the bikes they put out. And when I heard they were doing an eMTB with a mid-drive, I was really excited to see how it turned out, and I think they did a really solid job. Priced at $2,095, I do think pretty confidently that if you go explore the e-bike market right now, especially mid-drive eMTBs that are built for real single-track riding, you're gonna find that this is a pretty phenomenal deal. Don't take my word for it, do your own research, but it is a solid value in the e-bike eMTB, especially with mid-drive game. Now, if there's anything I missed that you guys wanna know, drop it in the comments down below. I'll get that information for you myself and reply to you in the comments. But all in all, I really enjoyed riding this bike. It's a fun bike. It is a fun trail bike that can get you around, let you do some real mountain biking and just explore that world. Or you could just casually commute around your town. It doesn't really matter. The bike is equipped to do either one. But if this was the eMTB you've been looking for with a mid-drive, I think TrailRush here did a solid job. So until the next review comes out, guys, I'll see you out on the trail.